No one is your friend in the way you hope. People are kind when it is convenient. People are loyal when it costs them nothing. People smile when they benefit and disappear when their comfort is threatened. This is not cruelty, it is reality. The mistake is expecting devotion, honesty, or sacrifice from those who are guided by self-interest. You can hope, you can wish, you can trust, but until someone proves themselves through repeated action, their words are meaningless. Trust is the most dangerous currency. Hand it freely, and you risk betrayal. Guard it, and you remain in control of your life. Watch how people behave when there is nothing to gain and everything to lose. Observe them in discomfort, under pressure, and when temptation calls. True character is revealed not in moments of ease, but in moments of trial. The kindest smile can hide a calculated mind. The softest words can mask intentions that will cut you when you are vulnerable. Do not confuse friendship with proximity. Someone can be near you, laugh with you, and nod in agreement, and still be willing to act against your interest if opportunity presents itself. Attachment clouds judgment. We want to believe, we want connection, so we ignore signs. We rationalize behavior, excuse flaws, and invent loyalty that does not exist. Attachment blinds you to truth and leaves you exposed. Be calm, but vigilant. Be respectful, but discerning. Let people reveal themselves slowly, over time, in a pattern of action, not just promises. Observe without telling, listen without responding, and remember that silence often shows more than conversation ever will. Actions speak when words are empty. Character is proven when convenience disappears. Self-reliance is your strongest armor. Do not hand over your security, plans, or vulnerabilities to anyone untested. The less you depend on another for your survival, your growth, or your peace of mind, the more freedom you have. When you can stand alone, you can choose relationships intentionally rather than out of necessity. You protect your life and your energy when you know that no one is obligated to be loyal or consistent. People reveal themselves under pressure. They are impatient, selfish, or fearful when they are tested. Some crumble, some attack, and some vanish. Those who remain consistent, calm, and principled under strain are rare. Watch and learn. Trust is earned slowly through observation, not claimed through conversation. Silence is your greatest tool. Observe. Measure. Wait, speak less than you think you need to, because those who speak most often reveal least. The quiet mind sees patterns, motives, and inconsistencies more clearly than the one desperate to respond, justify, or impress. The world does not owe you truth. You must discover it through attention and reflection. Discernment is your shield, not bitterness. Being careful is not cruelty, and caution is not paranoia. It is intelligence applied to reality. It is the ability to separate wishful thinking from evidence, perception from desire. To trust blindly is weakness. To trust selectively, based on proof and consistent action, is wisdom. Protect your mind and heart. Measure the value of those around you by what they do, not what they say. Remember, loyalty is earned. Respect is earned. Trust is earned. Few will cross the line to protect another at their own cost. Most will act in self-interest first and kindness second, if at all. Accept this truth and you gain power. Accept it and you are no longer naive. Accept it and you can navigate the world with awareness rather than disappointment. Do not let hope or desire cloud perception. Do not let attachment blur judgment. Do not mistake smiles for allegiance or proximity for trust. Watch, observe, and measure over time. Protect yourself, because when it matters most, no one is guaranteed to stand by your side. The world is human. People are human. And humans act according to benefit, fear, and comfort before principle. Let your life, your decisions, and your trust be guided by observation, proof, and consistency. Let caution protect your energy and clarity guide your choices. Let action be your measure of character, not words. You are responsible for your own stability, your own growth, and your own peace. Trust is a gift to be given sparingly, earned relentlessly, and never assumed. Stand alone when you must. Be silent when observation is required. Guard your plans, your vulnerabilities, and your ambitions. Accept that most will not understand, many will not care, and few will be consistent. This is not pessimism, it is realism. The world is full of faces that smile, hands that offer, and voices that promise. Look deeper. Observe the pattern of action. Evaluate by what is proven, not what is spoken. Be strong enough to act without dependency. Be patient enough to watch without interference. Be wise enough to trust only when evidence aligns with principle. The cost of misplaced trust is high, and the consequences are real. Protect yourself not through suspicion alone, but through clarity, observation, and disciplined action. In a world where few are true friends, self-reliance, discernment, and patience are your most powerful allies. Trust is earned through consistency, not words. Words are easy to produce and almost nothing. Anyone can promise loyalty, honesty, support, or care. Anyone can say what another person wants to hear in the moment. But words are weightless unless they are backed by repeated action over time. Consistency is what gives trust its substance. Without it, trust is only hope disguised as belief. Human beings are naturally drawn to language. We remember what people say more clearly than what they do, especially when their words flatter us or align with our desires. This is why manipulation often begins with speech. Compliments, reassurance, and confident promises create an illusion of safety. But consistency is slower and less dramatic. It requires patience, discipline, and the willingness to show up the same way regardless of mood, benefit, or audience. Most people cannot maintain this for long, and that is why consistency reveals character more accurately than any declaration. Trust grows when actions align with words again and again, especially in small, unremarkable moments. Anyone can act correctly once. Anyone can be generous when it is convenient. Anyone can be supportive when there is nothing to lose. Consistency appears when circumstances change and behavior does not. It appears when there is pressure, fatigue, temptation, or risk. And the person still acts according to the same principles. This repetition is what allows the mind to relax because predictability creates safety. Inconsistency, on the other hand, creates confusion. A person who is kind one day and dismissive the next forces others to constantly adjust their expectations. This instability drains energy and attention. The mind begins to question, to anticipate disappointment, to stay alert. Even if the words remain positive, inconsistency erodes trust silently. Over time, people stop listening to what is said and focus only on what is done, because experience has taught them that speech cannot be relied upon. Consistency also demonstrates self-control. To act the same way repeatedly requires regulation of impulse and emotion. It means not reacting impulsively, not changing values based on advantage, and not abandoning commitments when they become inconvenient. This kind of discipline signals reliability. It shows that a person is governed by something deeper than temporary feelings. Trust naturally flows toward those who are internally stable because their presence feels grounded rather than chaotic. Many relationships fail because trust is given too early, based on words rather than patterns. Early enthusiasm often disguises inconsistency. Someone may appear attentive, supportive, and invested in the beginning, only to withdraw once familiarity replaces novelty. The mistake is not in wanting connection, but in mistaking intensity for consistency. Intensity is emotional and short-lived. Consistency is quiet and enduring. One creates excitement, the other creates safety. Consistency also includes accountability. When actions fall short, a consistent person acknowledges the failure and corrects it. They do not deflect blame or rewrite the story. This reinforces trust because it shows alignment between values and behavior, even when mistakes occur. In contrast, someone who speaks about integrity but avoids responsibility reveals a fracture between their identity and their actions. Over time, this gap widens and trust dissolves. Trust earned through consistency is not blind. It is built slowly through observation. It does not require constant reassurance because evidence accumulates naturally. Each repeated action becomes a data point. Each kept promise strengthens the structure. This kind of trust is resilient because it is grounded in reality rather than expectation. It does not collapse easily under stress because it has already survived many tests. In professional environments, consistency is often valued more than talent. A person who delivers reliably, meets deadlines, and maintains standards earns confidence, even if they are not exceptional. Meanwhile, someone who speaks confidently but performs unpredictably creates risk. Organizations, like individuals, depend on trust to function. Without it, systems become inefficient, layered with checks and controls to compensate for unreliability. Consistency reduces friction because it allows others to plan without fear of disruption. On a personal level, consistency shapes reputation. Over time, people become known not for what they claim, but for what they repeatedly do. Reputation is simply the memory of consistent behavior stored in other people's minds. Once formed, it is difficult to change because it is reinforced by expectation. This is why inconsistency early on is dangerous. It sets a pattern that others learn to anticipate. Trust also requires patience from the one who seeks it. Wanting to be trusted without demonstrating consistency is a form of entitlement. It assumes that intention should be valued more than action. But trust does not respond to intention, it responds to evidence. This is not cruelty or skepticism, but realism. The world teaches through consequence, not promise. Those who understand this do not rush to persuade. They allow their actions to speak, knowing that consistency will eventually be noticed. They do not demand trust. They create conditions for it to grow. This quiet confidence is often mistaken for indifference, but it is rooted in discipline. It reflects an understanding that real credibility cannot be argued into existence. Consistency also protects against self-deception. When someone commits to acting according to their values repeatedly, they are forced to confront their own limitations. They see where effort drops, where excuses appear, where discipline weakens. In this way, consistency is not only a signal to others, but a mirror to oneself. It exposes gaps between identity and behavior, offering the opportunity to close them through practice rather than pretense. Words can inspire, comfort, and explain, but they cannot replace action. They are invitations, not guarantees. Consistency is the acceptance of that invitation over and over again, even when no one is watching, even when there is no immediate reward, even when silence would be easier. Trust formed this way does not depend on constant affirmation, because it is anchored in lived experience, reinforced by time, and sustained by the quiet certainty that behavior tomorrow will resemble behavior today, not because it is promised, but because it has already been proven through repetition and restraint in moments where a deviation would have been easier and more immediately rewarding than staying aligned with what was claimed to matter in the first place. Attachment clouds judgment because it binds perception to emotion rather than reality. When we become attached to people, outcomes, identities, or expectations, we stop seeing things as they are and start seeing them as we want them to be. The mind begins to protect what it is attached to, even when that attachment causes harm. This protection is subtle and often unconscious, which makes it dangerous. We believe we are thinking clearly, but our judgment is already compromised. Attachment creates bias. Once we care deeply about someone or something, we interpret information in a way that preserves the bond. We excuse behavior that would otherwise concern us. We minimize warning signs. We reinterpret disrespect as misunderstanding and manipulation as care. This is not because we are weak, but because attachment triggers fear of loss. The fear of losing what we value distorts our ability to assess truth objectively. The mind does not like discomfort. Attachment intensifies discomfort when reality threatens what we are holding on to. To reduce this discomfort, the mind adjusts perception rather than releasing attachment. This is how denial forms. Clear evidence can be present, but judgment bends to avoid emotional pain. In this state, logic serves emotion, not the other way around. Decisions made under attachment often feel justified in the moment and regrettable later. Attachment also narrows perspective. When emotionally invested, attention becomes selective. We focus on information that confirms our desire and ignore information that challenges it. This selective attention reinforces false confidence. We believe we are being fair while unknowingly filtering reality. Over time, this creates a distorted internal narrative that feels consistent but is disconnected from facts. In relationships, attachment often leads to overtrust. We assume loyalty, honesty, or competence without sufficient evidence because questioning feels threatening. To doubt feels like betrayal, so judgment is silenced. This is why people remain in harmful situations longer than logic would allow. They are not unaware, they are attached. The attachment makes leaving feel worse than enduring, even when endurance erodes dignity and stability. Attachment also interferes with boundaries. Clear judgment requires distance, but attachment pulls us closer, blurring lines. We tolerate behavior we would never accept from others. We compromise standards to preserve connection. Over time, this creates internal conflict because the mind senses imbalance while emotion resists change. The result is confusion, anxiety, and indecision. In decision-making, attachment increases risk. When outcomes matter too much emotionally, fear and hope overpower reason. People chase validation, status, or approval, mistaking emotional relief for long-term benefit. This leads to impulsive choices and poor timing. Judgment becomes reactive rather than deliberate. Instead of asking what is right, the mind asks what will preserve comfort or avoid loss. Attachment to identity is equally distorting. When we become attached to who we believe we are, we resist information that challenges that identity. Feedback feels like an attack. Growth feels like threat. Judgment becomes defensive, focused on protecting ego rather than understanding reality. This prevents learning because learning requires admitting limitation. Attachment to self-image traps us in stagnation while convincing us we are being authentic. Attachment also affects moral judgment. We judge others harshly for actions we excuse in those we are attached to. The same behavior is interpreted differently depending on emotional proximity. This inconsistency weakens integrity and self-respect. Over time, the mind becomes fragmented, holding contradictory standards without recognizing the contradiction. Detachment does not mean indifference. It means the ability to observe without being controlled by emotion. Clear judgment requires space between stimulus and response. Attachment collapses that space. Emotion rushes in and decides before awareness can intervene. Detachment restores that pause, allowing choice rather than reaction. Many mistakes are not caused by lack of intelligence, but by excessive attachment. Intelligent people make poor decisions when they are emotionally invested. This is why wisdom is often associated with restraint rather than knowledge. The ability to step back, to question one's own motives, and to tolerate discomfort is what protects judgment. Attachment thrives on immediacy. It wants reassurance now, resolution now, certainty now. Judgment requires patience. It requires waiting, observing patterns, and allowing clarity to emerge. When attachment dominates, waiting feels unbearable. Action is taken prematurely to relieve emotional tension, even if it creates long-term consequences. The cost of clouded judgment is cumulative. One compromised decision leads to another. Small concessions become habits. Over time, people find themselves far from where they intended to be, wondering how it happened. It happened gradually through moments where attachment overruled clarity and comfort was chosen over truth. Awareness of attachment is the first step toward clearer judgment. Noticing emotional pull without immediately obeying it creates distance. This distance allows perception to recalibrate. Reality becomes visible again, not as we wish it to be, but as it is. From this place, decisions become calmer, firmer, and more aligned with long-term stability rather than short-term emotional relief. Judgment is strongest when it is not owned by fear of loss. When we accept that everything is temporary, attachment loosens its grip. We still care, but we are no longer controlled. We can appreciate without clinging, commit without blindness, and choose without distortion. In this state, clarity is not forced. It arises naturally because the mind is no longer busy defending what it fears to lose. People reveal themselves under pressure because pressure strips away pretense. In ordinary circumstances, anyone can present a curated version of themselves. Smiles can be practiced, words carefully chosen, and intentions disguised. Social facades are maintained when there is comfort, routine, and predictability. But when the stakes rise, when fear, stress, or urgency enters, these masks often crack. The way a person responds to pressure exposes character more clearly than any conversation, claim, or promise ever could. Pressure acts as a magnifier. It amplifies tendencies that are normally hidden. A small impatience becomes a harsh reaction. A minor frustration escalates into anger. A slight insecurity transforms into blame. The mind, pressed by circumstance, defaults to patterns formed over a lifetime. Habits, beliefs, and instincts emerge in full force. Those who are disciplined, thoughtful, and principled remain consistent under pressure, while those who rely on performance or charm falter. It is not only stress that reveals truth, but also temptation and risk. When someone is offered advantage without accountability, the decision they make demonstrates priorities and integrity. A person may speak of fairness, generosity, or loyalty, yet when faced with opportunity to benefit at another's expense, their choices reflect reality. Pressure exposes the distance between words and actions. Promises become fragile, and intentions that were easy to declare become difficult to execute. The human tendency to protect self-interest becomes evident under pressure. Comfort and safety often dominate consideration, even when ethics or responsibility are at stake. Observing how people navigate high-pressure situations provides insight into what they value most, what motivates them, and how they define right and wrong. Often, those who appear calm or charming in daily life reveal hidden impatience, fear, or selfishness when outcomes are uncertain. Pressure also tests loyalty. Relationships, professional ties, and alliances face strain when external forces demand decisions or sacrifices. True loyalty is proven not when life is easy, but when challenges arise. Some individuals will bend under pressure, abandoning others to safeguard themselves. Others will act with courage, consistency, and honesty, even when doing so is difficult or dangerous. The difference is subtle at first, visible only in small choices, but accumulates over time to define trustworthiness. Stress often triggers emotional amplification. People under pressure react in ways they would not in calm conditions. Temper rises, judgment falters, and impulsive decisions become more frequent. Observing these reactions allows one to understand priorities and emotional regulation. Those who remain measured reveal self-control and inner stability, while those who act recklessly reveal susceptibility to external forces. Pressure also exposes resilience. Some individuals crumble under difficulty, abandoning goals or responsibilities, while others adapt, strategize, and persevere. This distinction is rarely revealed in comfort. The ability to persist under strain, to maintain composure and effectiveness, is a more reliable indicator of character than any public display or spoken commitment.